Like a presidential shakeup in the nation of baked goods, JT Port has officially assumed the role as president. We have the latest on the events that led up to the resignation, as well as full coverage on the transition. The inaugural episode of Live with Parker Jackson starts right now. And good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us on our inaugural episode of Live with Parker Jackson. I'm officially back in news after almost a year's break from covering the latest news and headlines. You can now catch me each week here on FTN on this brand new show. But we do have a lot to get into tonight, starting with our special coverage of the presidential transition from baked goods to JT Port. Let's get into your live headlines for tonight. President Baked Goods is out of the White House tonight after resigning early this morning around 1 a.m. In his resignation letter, one of the key details outlined was that group management has failed once again to help bring the nations back to its old glory days. Stating, "Fallen, the main contributor is the fact that Paul and group management both do not care for the well-being of the nation. Countless times I have messaged members of the group management requesting assistance to better ensure that the nation continues on as it has for the past 10 years. Yet every time my pleas have fallen short to deaf ears and no actions were taken to assist in helping bring the country back to what's the prestige of what many people know as the Golden Age." Following President's resignation, many other people who worked inside of his cabinet resigned as well. These resignations include Secret Service Deputy Director Cody Downlow, Director of National Intelligence Buzz Mike 11, and FBI Director Tim Coulter. 7 hours later, JT Port was sworn in as the 40th President of the United States. He also did not hesitate to get to work, making a statement saying, "I want to follow up by asking for patience. I cannot lie. With all the recent resignations, it's going to be a problem for group's growth. Ever since I became vice president, I've ignored politics instead of preached that, and I instead rather have preached that our group faces a crisis that could see the work of Paul and Knight's disregard. Our country is in need of a dire fix, and that is what I plan to do as President of the United States." He also got to work appointing Nine Sin Nine as Secretary of Treasury, Tactical Varico as advisor to the President on National Security, and JS to the vacancy in the United States Senate. Along with that, he released applications to the public to fill many vacant positions within the government. We are also following breaking news out of Washington, where earlier today, the White House learned about Representative Rockefeller's attempt to have the president removed, and we will be talking with Speaker of the House Game Lab next with the latest. Live with Parker Jackson. We'll be right back after this quick break. And thank you for joining us again here on Live with Parker Jackson. Once again, we are live throughout the entire episode, and joining me now is Speaker of the House Game Labs. And he's here today because we learned, or rather, the White House learned about some Representative Rockefeller trying to attempt to have the president removed. Game, can you give us some more information on this?
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to say thank you for having me on. I've been a fan of the great people at FTN for a while now. But essentially, from what I understand, Representative Rockefeller earlier today came into general chat making allegations about JT and the situation regarding why Baked resigned. He hasn't presented any evidence or proof to these allegations. So, as stated in a statement I released earlier, I I said that the House will not take action. Well, the Speaker does not condone taking any action um, on allegations, nor should Congress be swayed by unproven statements.
And what statements were they making?
I could look more specifically right now. You just gotta bear with me here.
Yeah, that's fine. I think that some of the viewers are curious on what statements they were making, and also, like you said, what did lead up to Bake's resignation. I mean, in his letter, he did state that again, group management has failed once again, and group management has always been failing. I mean, a year ago they were failing; they're still failing now. Do you have those statements pulled up now?
I almost, but in the meantime, just want to give a quick shout out to my boys Ben and Norman.
Yeah.
Had to slide that in there. But Mason said Baked was forced to resign because he shared personal shit about family deaths and people being sick with his VP, and rather than help him out in a time of need, JT basically just laughed and told him to resign, and that JT has been trying to snake him for weeks and just used the real life stuff as more ammo to shoot at Baked till he couldn't keep going. That was one of the most inflammatory statements Mason made earlier today. And there's and he's been calling for JT to resign and all that. And he pointed out that JT allegedly called reps while drunk to impeach Baked. Um, but none of these statements have been backed up. So, as I said, I don't really condone taking any action based on statements that haven't been proven, as it's important that we let the concept, one of the most American concepts of innocent till proven guilty, to really play out here.
So do you know the actual reason why Bake did resign?
From what I understood, he did have personal things going on, and is just stressful, and he didn't really enjoy the job. I don't know much about it, and some of the stuff that I do know, it was personal. He told me like kind of in confidence, so I don't really want to be blasting his personal information out.
Yeah, of course, and I totally understand now. Now, in the wake of all this, what are you doing as Speaker of the House to ensure that Congress stays strong?
Well, my first session as speaker is actually being held tomorrow. We're trying to determine a time. The biggest thing on our agenda is to finally pick a USCP chief, um, and any other legislative business that comes up between now and the session. I also plan on hosting open mics, of like big block of cheese events almost. Um, I'm gonna be in DC more, host SSUs, and do interviews like this to make sure I engage with the American people as much as I can, because I think it's important to build that level of trust and connection between Congress and the people.
Yeah, of course, and thank you so much for coming on Game. Live
Thanks
with
for
Parker
having me.
Jackson. We'll be right back. And welcome back to to Live with Parker Jackson. Joining me now is Speaker Pro Tempore, I believe, Andrew. Good evening, Andrew.
Good evening.
So, Andrew, I'm going to ask you the same thing that I did to Game earlier. In wake of all the things that are happening right now, what are you doing to ensure that your group stays as strong as possible?
Um, at the moment, we are attempting to deal with these JT allegations, which are splitting our congressional members apart from what's really important, which is, of course, focusing on the public and helping the people. In order to keep the peace within Congress, at the moment, I am coordinating with other members of the House of Representatives and the Senate to get appropriate bills put in place so that we may further the agenda which we had set when we were elected into office.
Indeed, and what agenda would that be that y'all are trying to work towards throughout this next thing? And then or just answer that first, and I'll ask my final question.
Okay, so the agenda that I personally sought out after was towards making the federal government more transparent. As you know, in light of recent events, I have noticed that the Federal Bureau of Investigations and other departments, such as the Department of Justice, have failed transparency wise in their proceedings and how they properly conduct their investigations.
Yeah, indeed. And my final question for you tonight is that with the presidential campaign season and registration just starting tomorrow, how do you feel with JT being just sworn in right before the presidential campaign season? And do you think that he will run for reelection?
This time, from sources which I will not name tonight, of course, I have heard that he will run for re-election. Of course, do I believe that will have an effect on his campaign? Yes, because of the current allegations put against him. I have a feeling that if he does not handle and address these allegations as swiftly and efficiently as possible, then he will tank in the election period.
Yeah, indeed. And again, thank you, Andrew, for coming on. And I want to thank everybody for watching our first inaugural episode of Live with Parker Jackson. Just a reminder or a quick note for the programming here. We'd like to remind you that tomorrow is the start of the election season in Noosa. Be sure to stick with FTN News for all the latest coverage of the presidential campaign. That's all for our inaugural episode for now, but be sure to join us next time for another great episode. Live in Studio 8B in New York, I'm Parker Jackson. Good night.